The four horsemen of the apocalypse are attacking and defending, and pursuing and withdrawing. Now, those are like innate capacities or innate reactivities that we all do. And in previous classes, I've talked about the pursuing and withdrawing. So I want to say a little bit about attacking and defending. One thing is that in these patterns, attacking and defending, you notice how they interlock with each other. You know, you have somebody who's judging, blaming, subtly criticizing, and then you have this withdrawing, pushing away, resisting. So those are all kind of psychophysical, psycho-emotional patterns that are deeply wired into our bodies, and we all do them. I'd like to say I can speak about the four horsemen of the relationship apocalypse because I'm good at all of them. I've been practicing them all for a long time. But with consciousness, we can learn to change those. So one of the things that typifies these patterns, these interlocking patterns, is a whole set of things which are similar. So we think attacking and defending are so different, but actually they're very similar. And I'll share with you why. Because in these patterns, you have this idea of interlocking, or they tend to co-stimulate each other. In other words, an attacker needs a defender. They interlock with each other. Another thing that's really important about these patterns is that they tend to repeat. You know, they tend to repeat for years and years in relationships. And you sometimes struggle with how to change your mood or change your reaction or change your response, but they tend to repeat. And in the repetition, there's something else that's very predictable. That each one of you in these patterns will tend to say the same thing or something like the same thing over and over. In other words, your defendedness is very predictable, repetitive, and your attacking is also predictable and repetitive. So what is important about those factors, you might call them, is that we learned those. We learned how to do things in a very specific way. And in a weird kind of ground figure thing, we can learn to study ourselves. We study just those specific reactions. We don't have to study all the emotional reactions that humans can have. We just have to study our own pattern of attacking, withdrawing, exactly how we do that. Because a general principle, a psychological principle with these patterns is they are usually defending us against some deeper feeling. That's why they're called strategies, or alternatively defenses. There's something deeper, more authentic, more scary, more complicated that's going on, and our psychology is like, I don't want to talk about that, I'll attack. I don't want to talk about that, I'll withdraw. So in consciousness studies, you know, in longer workshops or in classes or in couple sessions, you can start mining into, you can use your consciousness and ask yourself key questions like, when I'm in my withdrawal pattern, what do I feel like physically? What do I feel like emotionally? What does this remind me of? This is a very quick survey of the communication model. You begin to learn how to talk about your own internal world and how you might have learned to react in such a way. And many, many couples and clients and students have asked me, well, what does that do? How does that make any difference? Well, you are applying consciousness to conditioning. That is the path for couples. That is the path of awakening. When you turn your consciousness inside yourself and say, what am I actually experiencing? And you begin to talk about that, you are teaching your brain a whole new pattern of behavior. And it's a pattern of behavior that rests in consciousness and intention instead of reactivities which are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old at times. So just want to say a couple of things about the attacking and defending strategies, asking yourselves a very important question. What might I be defending? What deeper feeling might I be defending if I'm attacking or defending? So I want to say a little bit about that by taking a step back. My great mentors, Gay and Katie Hendricks, taught me something. It's really important. It's really simple, really important. Most of us have an internal drive. We long to connect. We long for intimacy. You know, you're on the path for couples. You're studying a path for couples. Obviously, you have a desire to connect, to have an intimate, emotionally rich relationship. And most of us also have a desire for self-improvement, self-development, self-transformation. And so you could call that your identity. We have a desire to develop our identity. So these two drives appear to be competing. They appear to be at odds with each other. How can I be intimate and have my identity at the same time? That's a really important question. But what's really key about that is that we are always sliding back and forth between the need for independence. I got to go to work now. I got to get this email. I got to write this letter, this check, whatever. Independence to, I really need to connect with you. I really want to be with you now. So we have these internal conflicts where sometimes we want to be independent. Sometimes we want to be intimate. Oftentimes in a couple, one of you will get typecast as the intimate person and the independent person. But it's more like those things are layered, okay? I like to say, scratch an independent person and you have somebody that wants a relationship. You're in a relationship. You must want something out of it. Okay, it's also true with attacking and defending. If you think about it, it often subtly shifts. The attacker has to stop, gets tired, understands that they're really charged, and then they become the defender. So these patterns and these moods and these internal currents are shifting all the time. So I just want to say a couple things about some key internal fears. If you think about the independence, the identity, the question that you start to ask yourself when you begin going into puberty is, what is my identity? Do I have an identity? How is my identity different than my parents' identity? How would I be different from them? So this is a confusing, complicated question. And so if we're being attacked or criticized for being independent, or if we never learned how to be independent, then we can have a fear about independence. So if you think about the withdrawal thing, you know, I'm pulling away, I'm being criticized. That is what you could call a fear of my own identity. Is there room in this relationship for me to be myself, express myself, to express my own needs, my own feelings? So let's just call that a hypothesis. Some of you may be going, I never thought of it that way before. That's okay. The point is that if you just think about that movement, it's like, I need space. I need space. You know, I'm withdrawing. I need space. Well, what do you need space for? I think it's to collect yourself, to understand yourself, to feel what your own needs are, and to calm down. Those are all needs over on the identity side. So let's go back to attacking. Let's go back to that longing for intimacy. If we're longing for intimacy and we're afraid that we can't have it, or that we're not going to get it, or that there's some little breach, oftentimes the attacking is actually it's a movement towards. It's a movement into the relationship. I need you to be like this. You're not this, you're not that. But in some ways, you could say it's a fear of abandonment. Okay? You're still moving towards. You may be angry, maybe energetically very painful for you and your partner, but you're moving towards. And so my hypothesis is in a lot of these angry situations where you're generating blame or criticism of your partner's behavior, you're actually experiencing a fear of abandonment, a fear of losing that connection. And being angry is the only solution or, quote, strategy that you have to make that connection. So what was exciting about this whole methodology that I'm proposing to you is by going from withdrawal to deeper fear or deeper longing or deeper vision to deeper intention, or going from attacking into deeper longing, feeling, fear, etc., you start to change those patterns. That's how consciousness applied to these patterns can change them. And it's a very exciting study. It's a very exciting study. And so what I've seen with my couples and with my students is that people start to understand where the anger, where the attacking is coming from. They start to understand that their partner is feeling some fear, some need for space. They start to understand that. And so when you drop down below the strategy into the longings, the vulnerability, the authentic feelings, there's often a feeling of warmth, a feeling of connection. And that automatically lowers the intensity of the attacking and defending, because both people are getting what they want in their base needs. The withdrawing person can say, I need a little space now, and it doesn't create a huge conflagration of criticism and judgment. So that's the hope that I have for this kind of discourse, that you can learn through consciousness to change these patterns and create that depth of love and consciousness and connection and intimacy and joy that you really want, and which you cannot find when you're in the attacking and defending pattern.